Great. Thanks, Eric. I can't believe we are here, and I've got to participate the last 3 years. I have an incredible panel that I want to introduce shortly. We're talking about the topic of analytics in action. It's really still about the customer. We're not fully in post-pandemic and post-COVID. We're designing our new normal. And I want to talk to our panelists about some of the topics today and thread some of those through into our conversation as well. But I'd like our panelists, Atal, Nick, and Brandon, to do a quick introduction. If we can have them join us, please. Great. Atal, can you start? Just a quick introduction to your role at Verizon.
Yeah, thank you, Katrina. Hello, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everyone, wherever you are joining from. My name is Atal. I'm actually the lead for our platforms and ecosystem strategy. I play a very what I would call a strong role in designing and shepherding our consumer strategy. And as part of that, I've been part of the customer experience and analytics related work for the last several years in Verizon.
Great. Thanks, Atal. Nick, how about you?
Yeah, hi, I'm Nicholas Hall, and I work at CVS Health. I'm a director in product management area focused on loyalty and personalization at CVS.
Great, thank you, Nick. Brandon.
And hey everyone, I'm Brandon Purcell, Vice President and Principal Analyst at Forrester. Been at Forrester for 6 years and have been covering customer analytics that whole time. So I'm thinking about this stuff every day.
You're probably dreaming about it too, if I know you very well. All right, let's get started. First thing I'd like to do, we're talking about, customer centricity. So, what does it mean for a brand to be customer centric? I'm sure the four of us, we probably all have our own definition, but I'd like to put up a quick polling question to our audience that they can answer, and then we'll look at that as we start to discuss it. So, team, can we put up that poll? Great, and I just asked the attendees, love to hear from you. What does it mean for a brand to be customer centric? Is it a strategy and a culture of doing business that focuses on creating the best experience for the customer? Or is it focusing every aspect of your business on customer needs and interests, prioritizing customers and their long-term success over short-term business goals? 2, or 3, above all, is customer centricity means putting the customer at the core of your business. So we'll let them address that, but let's jump in. There's a lot of topics we've talked about with the experts, and some of the things that came through that I want to kind of pull to the front first. When we talk about customer centricity, it's all based on the data layer, the data foundation. And so I think where I want to start is customer privacy. And, customer privacy, regulatory concerns, and even, third-party cookie depreciation. So Atal, let's start with you. Can you talk about data privacy and what that means and how you're part of that discussion within Verizon?
Yeah, absolutely, Katrina. Look, our two brand attributes are trust and innovation, and we really take them very seriously. As a lot of people do not understand that from a regulatory perspective, we have a legacy of being regulated for more than 100 years, right, as a legacy telecom company. What that also means is actually being regulated by both FCC and FTC, and there are different rules around those that we need to adhere to and manage. At the end of the day, we have taken customer data and privacy very seriously, even before this became a topic of the conversation. Our marketing approaches, our customer experience and service approaches, they're all driven by taking the information that we truly need and then helping our customers along the way. So as these new regulations and these new changes have come into picture, we have actually taken a more conscious approach. So that's the big change, is that now we are more conscious about what we're using. But in practice, in terms of our day-to-day operations, the way we approach our customer experience, the way we approach our customer service and marketing has not changed dramatically, and we do not foresee that changing dramatically either, just given that we have always had to do with less information about the customer and make the best use of that in the context of the customer interactions.
Gotcha. Thanks, Atal. That makes sense. I'm going to ask you all about some real-time data. Nick, I know that, working in the middle of the analytics and thinking about, the minute clinics for CVS and, CVS Health and the offerings, comparing it to, looking even at Katrina as a customer of the retail store for CVS and or leveraging the minute clinics. I actually went to a CVS to get one of my COVID shots. And it was really easy. But how do you balance concerns around data privacy, not only GDPR, CCPA, but HIPAA too, because of the health component? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one that we manage all the time. So we do have kind of a little bit of a separate way of doing marketing to the retail part of the organization versus the healthcare side of the organization to follow along with regulations. But we're trying to figure out, when we have permission, how can we, smartly do marketing, and it's really, really, really critical for us to go to the customer in one unified way. CVS is very large and has a lot of different businesses and a lot of different ways that customers can interact with us. And historically, customers have had very different experiences when they interact with us in different ways. So it's definitely, especially now as we are trying to pivot to being much more of a healthcare company, a major focus for us. To use that data across the platform. We pushed a lot of our data to the cloud so that we can have a unified view of the customer, and we're still trying to figure out the best way to activate on that, but it's definitely a focus.
I'm going to pivot right there. Do you have real-time data that you're capturing? I know CVS is famous, and I've probably even teased you about the long receipts at the register, but I take advantage of some of those often, actually. But are you trying to use any level of real-time data to kind of inform that regardless of channel?
Yeah, we are. I think one push that we're going towards is, historically we've been very kind of human and campaign driven, like a human kind of thinks of a marketing campaign and we send that campaign. What we're trying to become is more customer action driven. So customer goes to a store, customer logs into the app, customer, does some interact with us in some way. And we hopefully learn from that and react in real time, and we are doing that to either just distribute some sort of message or offer, or enhance the customer experience in some way. So that again, that is a huge focus for us, and that actually allows for a more simplified customer experience because you can set that up, some rules based on that in advance, and so we are shifting in that direction. Yes.
Great, thank you, Nick. Brandon, I want to ask you about this idea around customer privacy, and if we think about third-party cookie deprecation and the implications of that, and the brands that you're talking with, are they really concerned about this, and what would you recommend as their strategy? I mean, I have some ideas, but I'd like to hear from you and get Atal and Nick's comments on them as well.
Yeah, so in the absence of third-party cookies, companies are and necessarily have to lean into their first-party data sources. I mean, most companies, most of the folks on the phone have been amassing first-party data on their customers for a long time. What I found covering customer analytics is that they're not realizing the potential value within that data. There's a lot more value in that data than what they're getting. The other type of data companies are leaning into and will continue to is zero-party data. And zero-party data, I understand it's a concept that Forrester created, but I think it's an important one because this is unlike first-party data. It's data that a consumer proactively shares with the business intentionally, usually in exchange for some sort of value add. So a good example would be like if you go to L'Oreal.com or another cosmetic site, a lot of times they'll ask you about your skin tone and your type of hair to guide you to a better experience and recommendation. I can see more and more companies, even in financial services and even healthcare and telco, asking customers for that data where there is an implicit value exchange there. And the interesting thing about that, Katrina, is as much as I love analytics, a lot of the times you're using analytics on first-party data to infer what a customer wants in that moment. But if you ask, you can save yourself a lot of effort.
Fair enough. And I think there's been also some analytics or opportunities where brands have proactively reached out and asked for interest and affinities and those things, maybe not so directly, and found that sometimes the prescription from, going from prediction to prescription of that experience may look different in how they engage versus what they've actually submitted based on that type of survey or solicited information. Atal, what do you think about real-time data? I know Verizon is really a leader in thinking about digital first. And working with yourself and different members on your team, very, very focused on this. And really, this kind of brings in that thread of a data-driven culture. So there's two things I want to ask you. One around real-time data and how you might be using that. And has that impacted this ability to move or evolve to that really data-driven culture?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, real-time data in our business is probably the most critical part, right? If you think about, I'll give you just two quick examples. If there is a network outage scenario, knowing and understanding where the customer is and where that situation is arising and being able to communicate with that customer, which we today proactively do, you need to have real-time data. And you have to think about how that data passes through multiple legacy systems to get to a point where it is actionable. It's an amazing feat of engineering. Not that we are shy of doing great engineering work, but this is really gets to that point of how important it is, but also how tough it is, right? I'll give you another example. If a customer is browsing our website and looking at some service offerings, and then wants to make a phone call or talk to our chat representative, we need to be able to respond in real time. And that real-time responsiveness comes with the ability to stitch together real-time data. I think if you ask me, as a company, we have all the data we need to service our customers. Our ability to provide the best-in-class service to our customers based on the data that's available to us is something that we don't need to worry about.
Let me ask you this, Atal. Any specific challenges? I know for the audience, all the brands that we work with and Teradata's technologies enabling, they're all struggling with the same thing and trying to unite this data, capture real-time data, and use analytics to inform better decisions and better experiences, right? What kind of challenges have you come up against that might be helpful for the audience to think about and maybe one that you solved?
Absolutely. I would classify the challenges in three categories. First is really about stitching together of the information and just kind of bringing it where it is actionable. And that is, there's a lot of work that goes behind the scenes to get to that point. Second is to making the data available in a readily in a format that is usable and consumable by the users of that data. And that is about data accuracy, data making sure that the data definitions and other things are really clearly laid out. And third, most importantly, and really critical for us as a company, is that we want to make sure that the right type of data is available to the right type of user at the right time, right? Not everyone can have access to all types of data. Those are the three kind of areas where we have had to work really hard. And it is not just about engineering. At that point, you have to work on the processes, permissions, access, legal, operational, all of those issues come into picture.
So not a simple fix. We can't find a silver bullet for sure. Nick, how about you? Are you guys looking at or working with any type of real-time data and try to, enable that in your current models or overall experience?
Yes, we are. I sort of mentioned this earlier, but we're trying to become more kind of event-driven in how we message to customers across channels. In the old world, where we had data, very on-premise across different databases, it was hard for us to do that because, different ways the customer interacted with us, the data was in different places, and so we wouldn't know necessarily how it was all working. As we have been moving to the cloud, we know when a customer is on CVS.com, or we know when they've transacted in the store, or we know when they've interacted with what's on promotion. Traditionally, all that data was in separate databases, and now we're uniting it. And so, we can activate on that and make sure we know what the customer has or doesn't have, and give them the right thing at the right time. We're still evolving. There's a lot of different stakeholders around creating that kind of perfect customer journey.
Sure.
But yes, we are definitely focused on that and doing that.
Okay. Right. Brandon, thoughts on how the companies that you're working with or advising, where are they? What seems to be the biggest challenge for them in really kind of not just unifying their customer data, but leveraging any learnings from the pandemic, from real-time engagement and trying to kind of shift, even platform experience. Any thoughts around that? Where's the biggest challenge that you've heard from the companies or customers you work with?
Yeah, well, the data harmonization, data hygiene challenges has constantly been the biggest one and remains to be so.
Okay.
The big change that we saw last year because of the pandemic is every year we do this state of customer analytics survey and we ask folks what data sources are you using, to analyze your customers. And last year we saw a 17% jump in the adoption of digital data, data from the web, from mobile devices, apps, etc. From 47% to 64%. So yeah, there was this acceleration in digital adoption by consumers and at the same time by businesses trying to understand those consumers' new behaviors in light of this new normal. So that was really exciting. The top data sources are still, demo is up there at like demographic data, 70%, point of sale data, a lot like not necessarily real-time sources. But I think
Sure.
What we've seen over the last year will continue and more companies will continue to use these much more insightful and context-laden data sources like digital.
Okay, great. Well, we have digital experts right here with Atal and Nick for sure for both of the companies they represent. I want to follow up and just close the loop on our survey from our attendees. It's interesting. Now, full admission, this was kind of a trick question because all three of them are correct. It depends on how you would look at it. But the overarching answer, at least polling from our customers, about 60% was the third. What does it mean for a brand to be customer-centric? Above all, customer centricity means putting the customer at the core of your business. So again, all of them were correct, but that one kind of encompasses it all. So I would also agree with that, but support the others as well. Let's shift a little bit. Anything specific? We have a little bit like 7-8 minutes left here. I want to ask kind of about the future, right? What are we thinking? What types of things are we thinking we should be paying attention to? And what do I mean by that? Things that may influence the future of your data-driven culture, right? May help it evolve. It might be critical mass or top-down, bottom-up. It could be that. Organizational changes, leadership changing, emerging technologies. Maybe a tool for you, 5G. It could be new platforms. It could be new types of data from those platforms that we would collect and use in our data and analytics approaches. Customer changing needs. I mean, the pandemic has driven that. So that's a broad and wide open question. But, I would ask, what should we be thinking about in relation to, what are you doing at Verizon at all? What are you guys thinking about if you're looking at 1 to 2 to 3 years out? What are you working on now to plan for those types of things?
Look, I think it's been a journey, but we are at a point where we know what's happening. As in, like, we have the understanding of both the customer journey and the predictive analytics that goes with it. So we know what's happening, what's going to happen. We have a sense. We can find ways to understand the customer intent in a meaningful way. At some point, that's going to be table stakes, right? What do you do with that is real question, right? And I think that's where the prescriptive part comes into picture, right? And how do you really close the loop with the customer? How do you really get to a point where we are actually doing the work for the customer rather than making the customer do the work, right? That's the next frontier. Right. And I don't think many companies are there yet, right? Part of the reason is the accuracy of the models and how exactly we are able to predict the customer intent and then how exactly the customer behaves after that. None of those things are that slam dunk, right? But then there are ways to learn that. There are ways to learn that in offline models and online models to actually get to that point. So that's I would say that that's the next frontier.
Okay.
Other challenges from an organizational perspective, from a people and process perspective, they will continue to remain there. Look, you got to create some real early wins to create champions that will then become your kind of spokespeople across the organization to really take the conversation forward. And that's a constant conversation, and that's not changing. But what is changing is what do you do with the data rather than or do with the analysis rather than getting the data to do the analysis. I think that's a trigger.
Right. That's, how I would summarize that, that's great feedback, is understanding that contextual disposition or the intent around situational fidelity of your customer, and then how you take action on that to respond to intent. Perfect. Nick, same question. I know it's pretty broad, but what did that make you think about that you and team are working on at CVS Health?
Yeah, I think for the future, in terms of what we're working on to be more customer-centric and use data better, there's kind of two things. One is being more open to how customers want to interact with us. We want customers to be able to buy through marketplaces, Uber Eats, DoorDash, buy online, pick up in store, some of that kind of stuff that we didn't used to have before the pandemic. So we're pushing that kind of stuff. The other item is we're trying to really be healthcare focused. And so, we have CarePass, which we launched a few years ago, which is our subscription-based loyalty program. We're trying to think of right now that's it's mostly focused on discounts for in-store and on CVS Health brand products. But what we're trying to do is think of how can we pivot that to being much more healthcare focused. So can we integrate with the Garmins and Whoops of the world to say if a customer gets 10,000 steps, can we reward them somehow, or so can we get their data and reward healthy behaviors? And so that is that's the type of thing that we're thinking about, is how can we again motivate and push healthy behaviors and use data to activate on that.
Oh, that's great. Influence and incentivize proactive, better health lifestyle type behavior. That's perfect. Well, we have just a few minutes. And like Brandon, I like, to kind of wrap it up with this future thinking question around what should we be paying attention to? What do you see happening, and what should we be planning for? What are your thoughts?
I think and I have a lot of clients who are at a certain level of analytical maturity who are thinking about this paradigm of the next best experience. Which kind of takes the next best product, next best action, next best offer paradigm, which has existed before, and flips it on its head, because those things, if you think about them, were very inside out. What are we going to try to get out of the customer right now? Usually from a marketing context. Whereas next best experience takes all of the data that you have about a customer, for marketing or digital or even a product or customer service, and has, you model that data, and then you say, okay, what does the customer actually need in this moment from us? And so Nick just mentioned, it could be some sort of interaction to improve their health, as opposed to trying to sell them something more.
Sure.
But ultimately, that optimal next best experience, and hopefully this is music to Eric Bradlow's ears, is what's going to optimize their lifetime value over the long term. So that takes a massive shift in thinking, right, between short-term conversion, and long-term lifetime value. But ultimately, that's what companies are thinking about, and that requires a layer on top of all of your analytics. It's a decisioning layer that says, okay, when these different conditions are met, here is the experience to offer to Brandon. And it could be a product experience, a marketing experience, some sort of customer service experience. That's what I think the kind of the holy grail of all of this is.
I couldn't agree more, and well said. Thank you, Brandon. And good tie in there into customer lifetime value, and really a proponent of bringing that loyalty component up to the front end and throughout the entire customer experience. And with that, I'd really like to thank our incredible industry experts. Atal, thank you for your insights, and you're front and center in digital transformation for Verizon, so I appreciate it. And Nicholas, I can't wait until I have a connected experience with my local CVS, from the minute clinics to the front of the house and throughout for my household and entire family. So thank you for your efforts there and your feedback. and Brandon, your industry expertise and what you're seeing. I think everyone can really relate to this conversation. And so thank you for our panelists. Appreciate insights and feedback in our discussion. But now in conclusion to our event, I have to thank Maddie and Rachel and the entire Wharton team for their help and valued partnership. I also want to thank our special academic guests, Katie and Kartik. I'm excited about learning more about their research and their books that they've written, and to learn more about their specific areas. There's so many things we could have had just conversations about any one of these topics. I also want to thank the entire Wharton team, and special thanks out to Eric Bradlow as co-moderator, and just his thought leadership in the industry and consumer analytics, and Jeremy and Martin, both from your kind of C-suite level and business industry leaders. That's specific. We're all challenged to think about those things that you've come up against, and how we're looking at the world differently now. With that, I'd really like to thank all of our participants, all of you that participated in this event. And Rachel, turn it over to you for any last thoughts or information.
Thank you, Katrina, and to the entire Teradata team. We love doing this event with you guys. To Mary Grow, to Martin, thank you so much. And of course, everyone for joining. We had many participants from all parts of the world, including Asia, Europe, Latin America, and the US. So thank you all. That was really exciting. So just a quick reminder to fill out our 2-question survey at the end of this event. You'll get a pop-up once the event ends. So just go to that link, fill out the survey, and then you will receive the slides once you fill out the survey. So we wish you all a happy and healthy end of your week. And thank you so much for joining. Bye-bye.